Hey guys, today I'm doing something of my absolute favorite things to do, which is ranking the 25 official James Bond movies. So as it's one of my favorite things to do, I want to kick it off very fast. There is one thing to mention: you will probably have a different opinion on the ranking. In fact of that, I would like to hear the ranking from you in the comment section down below. We would all adore to see that. Please don't hate each other for having different opinions or other rankings. Please be respectful to each other. And with that being said, I can now show you what I consider to be the worst Bond movie ever. Sadly, it's Diamonds Are Forever, and what is good about this movie is only the music. Like, the score is from John Barry, and obviously a good James Bond score as usual. And the title song Diamonds Are Forever from Shirley Bassey is a classic Bond song, I like it. But beside from that, the movie is very silly and stupid. You have some, like, questionable characters where even I am not quite sure what to think about them, like Mr. Win and Kids. Some people absolutely love them, some people absolutely hate them. I would think that I'm in something in between, but I don't really like to see them. The new Blofeld, played by Charles Gray, is worse than the others, as easy to say. His jokes are horrible, and he is a very harmless villain in my opinion, and we have the absolute zero chemistry Bond girl, Tiffany Case. To be fair, it's very hard to build up chemistry with an actor who is absolutely not interested in the movie at all, and this is the main problem with Diamonds Are Forever. The main man, Sean Connery, has absolutely zero interest in Diamonds Are Forever to be a good Bond movie. He doesn't care at all. The movie feels like a money machine. The movie feels cheap. The movie feels silly. The action sequences are unexpected boring in a Bond movie, like the car chase or the moon buggy chase. I get really bored by seeing it, and I would say this is the only Bond movie I would never ever recommend to anyone. So would I recommend Quantum of Solace? Probably not as well, but I would think that some people who maybe liked like Bourne Identity could like Quantum of Solace. But as a Bond fan, I have to say I really disagree with Quantum of Solace as a Bond movie, and especially as a sequel from Casino Royale. You could say it's very compact, or I would rather say short. It's the shortest Bond movie ever, and you have some good action scenes, I would say, like the chase between Bond and that man where Bond is grabbing for the gun and then takes it and kills it is a really cool sequence in my opinion. But aside from that, we have too much action sequences. We're just overcut. You just have 3 cuts in a second. You don't see anything. Camille gets too much story time for my opinion. Her revenge story is much more uninteresting than Bond's. You have an apple snacking Dominic Green as a villain, which is not the main problem, but he's just the most harmless villain in the whole series. We have that no emotion cold Bond who is just sometimes feels new and fresh and cool, but at the same time it always feels a bit heartless and too harsh for me. And obviously we have, for me, the worst title song of the whole series. This is the only song I never ever would listen to. Overall, just an uninteresting and very disappointing sequel. There are actually few things I like about this one. Actually, it's something like the title song. The title song I really like. It's very rocking. Obviously the lyrics are so stupid, but I really get a good mood while listening to it. We have a young Roger Moore I really like. It's really fresh to see a young Roger Moore, while in his later movies he looks very old and not very dynamic, but in movies like Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun, he really kicks some ass in action scenes. And we have a great connection between him and Scaramanga, like James Bond against Francisco Scaramanga, Roger Moore against Christopher Lee. Just a great duel, and the connection between Andrea Anderson and Scaramanga is without a doubt a great storyline in the movie. Nick Nack as a henchman really kills the vibe of the good villain Scaramanga, because how can you employ this guy? He is so harmless. If you don't think he's harmless till the end, you will think it at the end, because the end fight between him and Bond is just laughable. Sheriff W. Pepper, I'm not a fan of him. He has, in The Man with the Golden Gun, to be honest, no funny lines at all. And the beginning and the ending of this movie always feels so cheap, like this looks like a studio from a student, but not a blockbuster EON James Bond movie Millions Productions. And obviously we have the unbelievably stupid Mary Goodnight, probably one of the worst Bond girls or characters in the whole series. Wasted potential just in this movie, yeah. Live and Let Die has one of the best musics in the whole franchise. You have a great title song from Paul McCartney. You have a great score from George Martin, which is very new. You have a very new version of the Bond theme, very fitting version to this whole context of the movie, and great employments from the title song Live and Let Die. But at the same time, the movie has some really weird things in it. Like Rosie Carver is still one of the weirdest and worst characters in the whole series, and she has a lot of screen and story time. And also Solitaire losing her virginity and Kananga believing in that reading card stuff from her is just a stupid thing and makes this villain seem kind of stupid to me. And it has, to be honest, one of the worst and unsatisfying endings of the whole series. Like, seeing Baron Samedi, one of the most entertaining characters on this movie, just laughing on the train while Bond is having fun with Solitaire, and the train is actually not deserved for this quite good Bond movie. Now, Moonraker, this is really hard to say or really hard to rank, because this movie has some underrated and some crucially bad points. Like, the effects and tricks in this movie are so bad. Like, you must imagine this movie competes with Star Wars: A New Hope, and the effects are so much worse. Like, the astronauts going out of their space shuttle is one of the worst effects I ever saw in movies. The story is just over the top. Jaws is just a damn laughable character in this movie. Chang is the worst henchman ever. Like, he's just screaming like Bruce Lee for very poor people. In the title song, I also always fall asleep, and just Roger Moore has 80% of his lines are just one-liners or comedy lines, I would think. But we still have some great aspects why this movie is not at the bottom of this list. We have a great score by John Barry. I absolutely love some versions in this movie. We have a very cool and underrated villain, Hugo Jax, played by Michael Lonsdale. I love listening to him and his plans. And we have a very underrated Holly Goodhead. I really like her as a Bond girl. And this movie overall is just too funny and sometimes laughable to be completely bad. Spectre is just a movie who has got down and more down in my list, because there are just some aspects I can't tolerate anymore. Let's start again with the good points. Craig fits really good into the Bond this time for me. Let me explain this. Because Craig is really bored of this role here, and many people see that as a problem, but I kind of like it, because James Bond in this movie also feels a bit bored and feels a bit lazy, and somehow this fits very well. The movie overall looks very good. It has great visuals, great technical work, very good dialogue scenes between Bond and Madeleine Swan. Actually, I really like that interrogation scene with her, and we have a nice pre-title sequence. I really like the scenes there. I think many people overrate it a bit because it's not that good, but it is quite good. But obviously we can't tolerate the bad things in this movie. Let's just start with the weakest things, I would say. The title song and the score is just horrible. I mean, the title song is the second worst of the whole franchise. But then we come to the main points why this movie is so low at my list. The story is the worst and silliest story of the whole franchise. Like, Blofeld living his childhood with Bond and disagreeing with his father, liking Bond more. I could not believe realizing that this is the story of a blockbuster James Bond movie, to be honest. We have a completely unnecessary storyline with C, who has CCTV cameras overall, doesn't care at all. Very poor showdown with printed out pictures of old villains and characters of the Craig movies in the MI6. I mean, did Blofeld really print out pictures from Vesper Lind and Le Chiffre and just stick it on that broken MI6 building? I mean, come on. I think it's the most stupid Bond movie ever, and would it be produced later in the days, it would have been completely at the bottom of my list. No, I'm very shocked to see The Living Daylights that low in my list, because I always liked this movie and I still like it, but I have some real problems with it. Still, Timothy Dalton is a very cold and very underrated Bond in my opinion. I think many people share that opinion nowadays, but I still think Timothy Dalton is a very underrated Bond. We have a very cool introduction of him and a very good acting by him over the whole movie. We have a very cold and cool henchman Necros. His fight scenes are very fun to watch. And that's the points where I actually like it or have a heart for this movie, I would say. But overall, this movie just feels very unexciting for me. I really get a bit bored watching it. The score is pretty repetitive. You have like the same score over and over and over. The villain in this movie is very, very poor. They are just ordinary weapon dealers and have a plan like with this opium. It is one of the more realistic stories of the series, I would agree, but for me it's a bit too realistic. It's never feels really exciting. I just think the story is very uninteresting. It just lacks my interest. The Bond girl Cara Milovi is very nice to watch, but nothing more than that actually, and I'm also not a huge fan of this title song, and it's a good midfield Bond movie, but just nothing more than that. I'm actually quite surprised seeing Octopussy that high in my ranking, I would say, because many people shit on this movie. I cannot really understand the hate for this one. I really love the scenes in India. The scenes in India in the jungle and Kamal Khan's house are really nice to see, and it's a good vibe there. Great chemistry, to be honest. Probably one of the greatest chemistries between Bond and Octopussy, the main Bond girl, because they have that same history. Bond knows her father, actually. They are almost the same age, or look like the same age, so it fits very, very well. Gobinda, who's just for me a worse version than Oddjob, but still a good henchman. And like I said, I always had a heart for this one, but still it has some problem. I mean, like Bond dressing up like King Kong, yelling like Tarzan, and again dressing up like a clown is not a very clever move. Actually, it's a real silly move. Title song, I again always fall asleep listening to All Time High, and the villain is just poor and very harmless. Kamal Khan is not a good Bond villain for me, and that's probably the main reason why people are shitting on this movie. Roger Moore again is a bit too old. And again, I'm very shocked seeing it that low, and you are probably as well, but let me explain it. Like, GoldenEye is the first 90s Bond, which is probably one of the greatest movie decades ever. And so many people have that nostalgia with the N64 game, and it's the first 90s Bond, and we have a great introduction with Brosnan coming in, that scene in that Russian chemistry labor. After that, we're hearing Tina Turner singing the great main title song GoldenEye. Like I said, we have introduced a new James Bond with Pierce Brosnan, we have introduced a new fabulous M played by Judi Dench, so how could this movie be that low in my ranking? Yeah, that's because after that, the movie always felt a bit off for me. The story is not straight. It, for me, does not know what it really wants. Like, we have that revenge story with Electra Villian, we have a bit personal of James Bond, we have a bit Cold War, and we have some really strange characters. Like, Xenia Onatopp for me is okay. I would say she's questionable, but I can live with her, but I definitely cannot live with this Boris guy. I know that I have something in advance for you, because the German synchronization with him is just the voice of SpongeBob, so it's horrible to watch for me. The settings are pretty uninteresting for me. I mean, like, the story just gives nothing more than playing in Russia, but I also made a bit of that nostalgia that many people connect with this movie. I just didn't play that game, I didn't live in that time, so forgive me, I don't have that nostalgia, and I don't feel the same love for GoldenEye like for you probably. So now this movie was way lower before, but after rewatching it twice, I really understand why this movie for many people is the best Roger Moore outing. Melina Havelock's performance is one of the best performances from a Bond girl I've ever seen. This movie has one of the best settings ever. Like, you have summer vibes in Greece, you have great winter Olympic vibes in Cortina d'Ampezzo. You have a very uncomplicated Bond and uncomplicated Bond movie. This is just a simple spy agent who just completes his mission without any gadgets. That is really cool about this movie, but still it lacks a bit of interest for me, because the villain Aristatos Christatos is definitely the worst of the series. He looks like a nice uncle and not like a harming villain who just kills people. And the plot, as I said, it's more down to earth, but for me it's not really down to earth. It's just weak and uninteresting. It's just a very weaker version of From Russia with Love. The final battle always feels so unspectacular for me, and I always wonder how this movie could be over now after just Columbo throws that knife in Christatos' back. I always wonder that this is now the end. All the time I've been watching Bond, this movie was in my midfield. I just only have a few problems with it, but at the same time there are just few things which stand out and make this movie very good. On the bad side, we have a very overacting Elliot Carver, in my opinion. He's over the top sometimes, and we have a zero chemistry Bond girl. Wylin with Pierce Brosnan, they build up no chemistry the whole movie, and then they kiss at the end. I can imagine the cringe on the set when they had to kiss each other. I think this comes really out of nowhere. Some people say, and I would sometimes agree on that it's a bit too much action in it. The story lacks a bit of interest because the actions are just some of overdose. The main song for me in this movie is Surrender by Katie Lang. If you don't know it, listen to it. It's such a great and bombastic song. I absolutely don't know why they don't took it as the main song. For me, this is Pierce Brosnan's best outing, not the best movie, but the best outing of his actual performance, because he looks so cool. He looks like Bond I don't question who is Bond here. Actually, we have a quite interesting media plot. This is just one of the more realistic World War III scenarios, if a World War III scenario was ever realistic in a Bond movie. We have some new innovative action sequences. I actually don't have any problems with Tomorrow Never Dies. I was honestly very shocked seeing From Russia with Love that low in my ranking because it was always one of my favorites. Still, the villain connection is absolutely great. You have Kronstein as the planner, you have Rosa Clapp as the HR department manager, you have Blofeld as Blofeld from Spectre, and you have Grant as the absolute brutal killer. That squad is one of the best lineups in Bond villain history. The Bond-Romanova connection is also very good. Bond seems to fall in love in this movie for me. It's also one of the best story writings. I think we always get to know a bit more of the story at the right time in this movie. Phenomenal story writing. But why is this not higher? Because for me, we first have no real ending to this movie. We have the first ending out of the train, then we have an ending with a helicopter chase, and then we have an ending with Bond and Romanova in Venice with one of the worst rear projections I ever saw, but I don't have a real problem with that. The music in this movie is not really there. You have no real title song, and the score from John Barry is probably the weakest of his work, but I don't blame him, it's his first one. But the main problem is this movie for me felt very slow while we watching it, and you could get a bit bored of this, but as a Bond fan I still absolutely like this movie, and I still can understand why you put it at the very top of your list. I seriously never got the hate for A View to a Kill. We have a rocking title song, one of the best ever. It's the farewell movie for Roger Moore, the James Bond legend. How can you hate or shit on the farewell movie for Roger Moore? One of the best villains ever in the Bond series, and I would say in film history, Christopher Walken is an amazing Max Zorin in this movie. He is such a good psychopath, and that Mayday storyline I always liked because it's one of the best turning good moments or stories in the Bond series, but still it is not the best Bond movie because Roger Moore is very old. It's not a good action movie because the action scenes are always stuntmans, and when it's Roger Moore, he's doing rear projections. Daisy Sutton is not a very inspiring, actually pretty annoying Bond girl, and the tricks in this movie, like I mentioned, the rear projections on the Golden Gate Bridge, are actually hard to accept, but never understood the hate for this movie. Before you really break out and laugh, let me just explain. Yes, the last 30 minutes of this movie are absolutely horrible, and I sometimes feel physical pain watching them. This movie contains one of the worst CGI effects I ever saw in movie history. Also, the villain transformation story from that North Korean guy to a British Gustav Graves is not very clever. But beside from that, I always have to mention in this movie that the first hour I absolutely love. At least 1 hour in this movie for me is phenomenal. Brosnan absolutely takes it serious. He probably knew that this movie is gonna flop, but he all took it serious. Even in that windsurfing scene, he seemed to be serious. We have great action sequences in that first hour. We have that hovercraft chase, we have that fencing duel between Bond and Graves, we have great shootouts in Cuba, a great Miranda Frost played by Rosamund Pike, surely the better Bond girl for me than Jinx. Great settings at all. North Korea is a pretty new and cool setting in the Bond movie. We have Cuba, which is very tropical and a very cool island there, and Iceland is also a cool place for taking the showdown there. It's probably the most guilty pleasure movie of the Bond series, and I absolutely understand why many people shit on that, but I actually don't care because I loved the first hour, and after having such a great first hour, I'm in a good mood and I don't care about the shit happening after that. Life can be so simple, baby, as Dr. No is, because Dr. No is just a simple spy agent movie, plays in Jamaica, has great settings, great girls, great dialogues, a great villain overall. It is still a classic. That's all what I can say about Dr. No. Yes, the pacing is sometimes very difficult maybe, but not for me. Bad tricks in that car chase, and the Dragunov Crab Key is very poor character writing as well, because Honey Rider tells of a rape story and killing a man, but after that, we never hear anything about that, which is sad because actually an interesting story. After that, we never ever hear anything about that. And the music in this movie, the title song is not there, and the score is actually quite weak. I mean, like, Jump Up is not aged very well for me, but I would say as a Bond fan, you cannot shit on this movie. It's just a classic. Best Brosnan Bond for me is The World Is Not Enough. We have wasted potential with a guy like Claude Renard. I mean, like, he's feeling no pain, and all you do is putting his hand in a cup of nails, and he's putting a hot stone on his arm, and that's all you do with this potential. I almost, after watching it once or twice, I still didn't really understand the story. I had to watch it 3 times to finally get it. The final battle in that boat is shamefully boring. The fight between Bond and Renard is really one of the worst showdowns in the series for me. I think I don't need to tell anything about Christmas Jones because she's not a good point in this movie. I wouldn't even say that the casting is too bad, but just giving her Lara Croft pants and saying that she's a nuclear physicist is just not that intelligent. But the movie contains one of the best action sequences ever. Like, that boat chase on the River Thames is stunning. Great score under that. Pierce Brosnan always kills it for me. He is just, again, phenomenal. And that Elektra King and dialogue scenes with him are absolutely nice to watch. We have also a personal story from M, which is not mentioned too much in my opinion. It's a very early M personal story compared to Skyfall, but I still like it that she had connections to Elektra King's father, that Elektra King hates M. I like that idea, and I never get boring watching The World Is Not Enough. This movie probably was all the time in my top 10, and I sometimes considered it to be the best Connery movie. Very weak title song in this movie. You Only Did Twice by Nancy Sinatra is another fall asleep title song for me. Very, very weird marriage Bond transformation to a Japanese storyline. I mean, like, really, who needed that, and who believes that James Bond goes Japanese here? Connery seems very bored, like that scene where his plane crashes, he's really uninterested. In fact, we have a very cool investigation spy story, like no one is really knowing what's going on there in Japan with that rocket. Great score by John Barry, he really made the best out of the title song. Great settings there, obviously the movie plays all the time in Japan, but we have great landscapes and obviously a great volcano there. And I have to mention the best Blofeld ever played by Donald Pleasence. For me, he is actually the best Bond villain of the whole series. Yes, it's just a mind-blowing scene for me, seeing him the first time by turning the chair after seeing him not in the first movies. And we have probably the best or coolest showdown, like the ninjas coming into that volcano lair, shooting everything down, killing Spectre. I always love to see that. I can really not believe that this movie is so high, because after going out of the cinema, I was just stunned. I could not believe what I just saw there. I just hated it so hard, but I rewatched it twice, and yeah, I absolutely can understand why so many people hate this movie and so many people actually like this movie. It's just super controversial. It's breaking with so many Bond rules that you just either can hate or love it. Beside from that, we have unnecessary side characters. No one needs a Nomi in this movie. I didn't need a Logan Ash in this movie, and I also didn't need a Christoph Waltz Blofeld in this movie. I'm also not a huge fan of the title song by Billie Eilish. Still, this movie contains great visual and technical work. It's just a joy to watch, where we have great landscapes, great visuals, underlined by a great and unique score by Hans Zimmer. Craig really gives it all in this movie. You can see the heart he put into this movie for me. And obviously there is this epic and crucial moment where James Bond just dies, and I hated it to see the first time. I was just stunned in my seat. I just couldn't believe what I'm just seeing. But after thinking and thinking over it and seeing it again, I just can now say that I think it's one of the most epic moments in the Bond series, and it is the best alternative they could have taken, because I can't imagine the Craig Bond living his life happy after that mission. Surprisingly, after seeing many rankings of YouTube, I realized that Thunderball is at the bottom of this list of many ranking YouTubers. I absolutely do not understand why. While first watching it, I also had a bit problems with the long underwater sequences, like where they hide this plane or in the showdown. I'm on a point where I would say that's it about the negative aspects in this movie. It's probably the best Connery outing for me. I mean, like, he was on the top of his success after Goldfinger. He was surely very motivated. Maybe the best Bond girl ever. Like, Domino, played by Claudine Auger's joy to watch. She has a bright and interesting story with her brother. Evil villain with Emilio Laghi, and arguably the best Spectre presentation ever, like in this room in Paris. I love to see the scene there. Fiona Volpe may be the best side character in the whole movie. She is always gorgeous to watch. And a great Barry score. Great locations as well. The whole movie plays in Bahamas and is about seeking a Spectre plane. What a great movie. This movie was actually quite higher on my list. Some tricks in the pre-title sequence are still bad. I would have wished for more screen time for the villain and a bit more seriousness. Seriously, this is the most serious Roger Moore Bond, but I still wished for, like, in the scene where he's in a car with Anya Masova and Jaws is following them, I would just wish that he's not just putting his key over there and just drives away because he's in fear of that man. But it's arguably the best Roger Moore outing. Jaws is a very interesting and not a joke at all, like in Moonraker. Very interesting Masova story as well. I love the ballad. Nobody does it better. That's how you make a ballad. We have so many iconic scenes with that Lotus underwater and one of the best final battles on that tanker called Leporus. I absolutely love to see it, and for me it's by far the best Roger Moore James Bond movie. Again, I'm very shocked seeing this movie so high. It was at the bottom of my list just a year ago. That arguments are still in there because I still am not a fan of that weird virus story that Blofeld is like hypnotizing this girl. This seems so unrealistic and stupid for me. I can't buy it. We have some really bad rear projections in some ski chases. I am also not the biggest fan of George Lazenby's performance. Yeah, I still think that some guys like Timothy Dalton maybe could have done it better here. And the love stories for me still a bit too fast. Like, they seem to hate each other, and just a minute after that they are absolutely fallen in love. So why is this movie that high after naming so much negative aspects? The music in this movie, it has the best score and the best title song ever. On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It has so many epic variations in this movie. It is such a joy to watch. It's so perfectly fitting to this movie. We Have All the Time from Louis Armstrong is hilariously good. I would now commit that Tracy is the best Bond girl ever. We have a good Blofeld. I still like Donald Pleasance more, but Telly Savalas is the second best Blofeld. And we have the biggest point, that tragic ending. So unnecessary, but so tragic. The death of Tracy. I always love to watch it and then hearing "We have all the time in the world." Let's make it quick. The only negative aspect of this movie is the, like, poison storyline that galore turns good in a minute, but that's about it. Always some Sean Connery. Top-notch villain. Auric Goldfinger, played by Gert Fröbe. He is one of the best villains, if not the best villain. Top-notch Oddjob. He is the best henchman ever. Outrageous title song, an outrageous score. It is so iconic, just poor Bond. My favorite scene of that movie is just when Bond drives that Aston Martin through the mountains of Switzerland, following Goldfinger and Oddjob in his Rolls Royce, and listening to a score by John Barry with the instrumental version of Goldfinger by Shirley Bassey. Perfect. I would say that if you like Goldfinger, you will probably love the whole Bond series. Now it's probably your turn to write in the comment if you think that this decision is still underrated or maybe even a bit overrated, because License to Kill is such an underrated James Bond movie for me. The only things I see a bit critical, I would just say that the soundtrack had more potential. Michael Kamen did nothing with the License to Kill title song by Gladys Knight, but that's about it. It's the best and most exciting story of the whole Bond series. An exceptional exceptional Timothy Dalton builds great connections to the biggest drug dealer of South America, Robert Davi, as Franz Sanchez with his henchman Dario. They really seem to like Bond, and it's so exciting to see that Bond just waits for the perfect moment to kill them, to blow it all up, to kill the whole system. He infiltrates the whole system, the whole movie, and it's so exciting to see when does it blow up. Absolutely epic title song, a new cover version of Goldfinger, to be honest. The most underrated Bond movie forever. I am absolutely in love with License to Kill and with Timothy Dalton's performance as James Bond. This movie made me watch Bond. This movie made me a Bond fan, I would say. Skyfall has absolutely zero negative aspects for me. We have a great acting Craig, we have a great acting M, we have an outrageous acting Javier Bardem as Raul Silva. One of the best title songs ever sung by Adele, stunning action, a phenomenal ending, interesting and well-grounded dialogues with Bond and M and Severin and Q. It's like a revenge story of Raul Silva to M and the whole MI6, and the end is just where James Bond drives with an Aston Martin with M to his parents' house Skyfall through the Scottish Islands with perfect Scottish weather. Skyfall for me is just a calm, philosophical, extra class Bond movie which set absolutely new standards with this. Casino Royale at top of this list, no surprise. This movie is by far the best Bond movie. It is the fans' favorite. It has even more profound dialogues with Bond and Vesper Lynd. The best Bond presentation ever, one of the best origin stories ever. The seriously best title song ever, You Know My Name. I seriously understand why it's the fans' favorite. Like, it's a Bond origin story on poker tables playing against Mads Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre with Vesper Lynd as a tragical Bond girl. I seriously cannot say anything more. It's definitely the best Bond movie ever. Now, this was a mammoth task to rank all 25 James Bond movies, but it made a lot of fun. I hope it made fun watching it, and I just can't say anything more than just wishing you a good day, thanking you for watching this video, and hoping to see you in the next video again. Bye.